Thank you everyone for joining our 4.8 release webinar. I'm really excited to have Vincent Babin join us today. He's our new product manager, joined SquaredUp about 6 weeks, 2 months ago. So welcome, Vincent. Vincent's joining me to demonstrate and take us through all the great new functionality that we're showing you today. Quick agenda for us to run through, relatively short and sweet. We're going to look at the roadmap, the journey that's taken us to where we've got to today. Then we'll dive straight into what's coming up in version 4.8, and then we're going to take a glimpse into the future and explore what we're looking at with version 5. And then hopefully at the time we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. So this is our roadmap as of September. We've released 3 versions already this year, and today we're announcing 4.8, the fourth release of the year. With 4.5 back in March, we had some new cost visualizations, dark theme being added to SCOM, new log visualizations, and lots of great functionality back in March. Then lockdown came upon us. We released version 4.6. In Azure, we added support for Lighthouse, new cost tile enhancements, also embedded dark theme into open access. So when you're sharing dashboards via open access, you can apply dark theme across those. And did a whole swathe of security updates as well. And then 4.7 came out in July, and this was a big release, both for Azure and the SCOM products. In Azure, we had a new cost utilization tree map, log analytics tiles enhancements, and new resource summary tiles as well. And we added some Lighthouse scoping, so when you're scoping tiles within a dashboard in Azure, you can filter it more easily by particular tenants. And SCOM, the out-of-the-box dashboards had a bit of a makeover, new infrastructure dashboards, new alerts analytics perspectives, and a really cool root cause perspective as well. Back in July, we did say that 4.8 was going to be a smaller release. So we're going to look for some small enhancements, a little bit of maintenance to do as we started to invest more of our time looking at version 5. I'm really pleased to be able to tell you today that we're responding to a lot of customer requests with version 4.8. We looked at all the suggestions that people have been sending in via our support channel, and this release is addressing about 30 individual customers' asks. And we've picked out some specific themes to look at here. So there's some matching colors and new visualizations for sort of web and SQL tiles. So let's take a look at that functionality in a bit more detail. Vincent.
Hi, John. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. So today we are going to look at some new features we're introducing in version 4.8. As John said, we are focusing on the most popular customer requests. So all the features we are going to look at today are available in SquaredUp for SCOM and SquaredUp for Azure as well. Okay. So we've got 2 new visualizations. One is our new line graph for SQL Tile, which is in a nice addition to the existing Scalar and Matrix tile available for SQL. We've got a new performance visualization that will display the latest value for a given metric. This is what we call our new Scalar tile for performance data. And then we've done a number of improvements to performance tiles in general. So we are adding the ability to color match your line graphs and your bar graphs. We are going to take a look at that in details shortly. And we're also adding the ability to set and display metric scanning labels, as well as a bunch of bug fixes that we fixed along the way. John, do you want to pass me? Yeah, great. I'm going to go over to my screen. Hold on a second, please. So this is, we're going to start with SquaredUp for SCOM today. And we are going to look at the first new feature we are introducing, which is our line graph for SQL tiles. So I'm going to go to my order processing app. So as you can see already, we can visualize certain metrics in this dashboard. These things we've already introduced in previous releases of SquaredUp for SCOM. So we've got an SQL Scalar Tile, actually 2 SQL Scalar Tiles at the top, which were available in previous releases of SquaredUp. One is showing me the number of orders on my processing app, and one is showing me the revenue that my processing app is generating. But today, what we are doing is actually bringing a new visualization to be able to have a line graph from an SQL query. Many of our customers asked us to be able to do that, and it's a useful addition because it's going to allow you to start graphing SQL queries to show you perhaps server patching over time, maybe the number of events on a given resource, perhaps more business oriented metrics like we can see in front of us, or for that matter, any time series available in any SQL databases, to be honest. So if you have your favorite monitoring tools that supports SQL, for instance, maybe a tool like SolarWinds, you will be able to query that database and graph your SQL query in a new line graph. So let's take a look at how we've actually done it on this dashboard. So I'm going to expand the settings, and I'm going to expand this graph here. So this is our new tile, which we call the SQL Line Graph. Very similar to the SQL metrics Scalar Tile, sorry, in that you can specify a connection string, give it a very simple or complex queries. That's really up to you. In this case, I'm looking at a time series on our local application database. I'm selecting the model region, quantity, and amount. And then we've added a new feature here, which allows you to basically map the fields that you want to display on your line graph. So here we recognize that the reporting date is our date and time field. So we automatically populate that to be your timestamp that's going to show on the x-axis. And then you have the option to decide what value you want to show. So in this example, orders by months, I am interested in quantity. So I'm basically selecting the quantity. And if I click down here, I've got my SQL line graph showing me my orders by months across my model and region. What I've done is I've also duplicated this tile and to be able to show the revenue by months. And essentially, all I'm doing here, if I go to my query on this one here, I am essentially just using exactly the same query, but I've decided that here I wanted the amount, not the quantity. So same query gives me a slightly different result, but ultimately a nice visualization here, a nice dashboard that I think stakeholders or even the applications team might be very, very interested in. Let's go over to another dashboard. So if I search for my server here, this is a perspective. So if I go to my Windows Server perspective, for those who are perhaps new to SquaredUp, a perspective is a kind of dashboard, but you create it once and it will work across any resources of the same type. So if we were to go to a different server, we'll be able to see the same dashboard, but with data from this other server. In that case, I'm looking at this specific server here and still looking at the new SQL line graph. What I've done here is, instead of querying a local application database, I've actually created a tile here which is looking at my SCOM data warehouse. So if you are using the SQL line graph in your SquaredUp for SCOM environment, you will have very easy access to your SCOM data warehouse, simple connection string, and that lets you do an array or an infinite number of visualizations here. What I've decided I wanted here is, alongside my CPU standard performance graph, I wanted to show the trend over time, which is a very useful view to see, how is my server being used? Should I downsize? Should I upsize? Or if the trend in this case is going down, maybe I need to do something else. So for that, I haven't created this query myself. One of my expert colleague gave it to me, fairly complex query, but ultimately all it does is compute together a trend line from the data in your SCOM data warehouse. It gives me a date time so that I can plot the data on my line graph, the trend and the max value for my CPU. In this one here, I've actually decided that I wanted to show both the trend and max value. So we've got the option as well for you to click show all, which is going to show both values returned from your SQL query. Something else that we've added here as well is because, as I said earlier, we are on a perspective, so we are not on a specific server, but I would like that same query to work if I was on a different server. So what we've done is we've added we've given you the ability to parameterize the actual path or the name of the server that you're specifically looking at on this perspective. So if you use a new mustache picker here for this specific tile, in this case, I've chosen display name to be my parameter, meaning if I use this query on a different perspective, it will show me the results for the corresponding object that I am looking at. Just to give you another example as well, so just looking at a different SQL database this time, I was able to, same principle, simple query, I was here able to pull out the number of events per day for this specific server. Again, I've parameterized the login computer so that this query can work across your perspectives. Right, so this is the new SQL Line Graph in SquaredUp for SCOM. We believe that's going to be a great way for you to graph your SQL data from any SQL database into this unified experience inside SquaredUp. You'll be able to create, we hope, more meaningful dashboards. You could giving you the ability, I guess, to mix business metrics, application metrics, maybe performance metrics all into a one unified dashboard. So let's move on to our next feature today, which is our performance Scalar Tile. So if I just come out of the editing mode, so you can see here I've added two new tiles here, the free disk space and in percentage and in gigabytes. So for those who know SquaredUp, SquaredUp for SCOM and Azure comes with loads of visualization, whether that's a status or SLA tile to monitor your application, down to more complex matrix, performance styles to drill down to the details of your environment. But there are times when perhaps all you need is just to display that simple performance value that you can easily glance at, maybe to quickly determine, is something good or is something bad? And that's what the performance Scalar Tile gives us. So let's have a look at what we've actually done here. It's actually a very simple tile. If I click settings, here all I wanted to know is what is the percentage free disk space on my server, okay? If it were 99%, I would be worried. If it were maybe less than 75%, I wouldn't be so worried. So that's a very easy, quick at a glance look at how things are doing. So if I go to settings, I've basically scoped my tile to the object I'm currently looking at. And if I go to metrics, I've picked my free space in percentage. And then all I need to do is then just format it so it looks nice and clear to look at. So I'm adding a percentage unit and I'm formatting it so it's returning some rounded numbers. So this tile is available for any metrics, any performance metrics that you can find in SCOM. I've added it's the same metrics here I've added, but it's looking at the free disk space in terms of size. So again, I think that's a useful new tile, gives you an at-a-glance summary of your most important metrics, and especially great for users of open access. For those of you who are maybe not familiar with SquaredUp, open access is our feature to share unlimited dashboards inside your organization. So if you're perhaps going to display this dashboard on a big screen, maybe in your network operations center, then being able to very quickly at a glance see whether things are good or bad, we think is going to be very useful for your users. And that's it for our performance Scalar Tile. So let's move on now to some improvements we've made to the performance metrics in general. So today in SCOM especially, SCOM does not store the metric labels. What I mean by metric labels is, you can see here the CPU is showing me on the y-axis 1 to 5. Now I know this is percentage because that's, if we look at the metric that I'm actually looking at here, my metric is percentage processor time. But SCOM doesn't store that metric in the database. So by default, we pull the value on the y-axis, but we don't show you the metrics. And so to overcome these, customers would typically add the metric label here in the title of the time. We don't think that's really ideal, and we wanted to improve that behavior. So what we've done in version 4.8 is we've given you the ability to choose from a list of standard metric labels, or even specify your custom metric label. So let's have a quick look at our CPU tile here. So if I go to metric, you will see that we are now giving you some new options here to configure your metric label. Very straightforward. Here I'm looking at percentage processor time, so I'm going to set that metric label to be %. And what we can see straight away is we are displaying the percentage metric label here on the y-axis, and also when you hover on the line. So I quite like that. So in fact, what I'm going to do is, now I've got it in my graph, I'm going to remove the percentage sign in my CPU because I don't need that anymore. It's on my graph already. Going to do the same for my memory as well. So again, I go to metric, I'm given a choice. Here, this is memory, % memory use. I'm going to use %, and here we go. Got a nice percentage sign on my graph itself. Same with disk space. Disk space is slightly different in that case. I think we are looking at some 3 megabytes. So what I've done here is I've actually, I could either type in megabytes, but I think I will just select megabytes, and it will automatically append a gigabyte, because we know that's we format the value in gigabyte automatically. And so you can see straight away here, again, just a much nicer way to look at your performance graph in general. So this new functionality, the metric labels, works also on report tiles, on performance bars, and on performance sparks lines as well. Okay. And as you've seen, set it once per tile, and really it is that simple. Now let's go over to another dashboard. So we're going to head to our list of enterprise applications, and then we're going to go to our sales app this time, and then go to servers. So here I want to talk about the new feature we introduced in 4.8, which is our color matching. So let me explain that for a second. So this dashboard we are looking at here is quite a common dashboard, we believe, where you are looking at, the same objects. In this case, I'm looking at my 2 web servers making up my sales app, web 01, web 03. Got the same here. Here I'm looking at processor. Here I'm looking at memory. And I'm also looking at those same 2 servers in terms of web services traffic. But because we are not matching the colors, as you can see, I mean, we've got web 01 purple here, and then it's like blue, dark blue here, and then it's all blue on the left. That creates a bit of a problem, especially when you need to look at your, the same resources across your graph. Maybe you're trying to correlate or better understand how a certain resource is performing. And that is not ideal, and we really wanted to set out and improve this. So what we've done is very simple. If we go to settings on my dashboard, on this specific dashboard, we've added a new toggle here, which we call performance tile colors. It's off at the moment, and when it's turned on, it's going to match the colors by label. So the label here in that case are all matching across my 2 graph lines. So what we've done is we've essentially matched the colors to be the same across those 2 graphs. I'm going to close that. And in fact, we we believe that this feature would be quite popular amongst our customers. So what we've actually done is when you install version 4.8, the toggle that we've just seen under settings will be on by default on all of your dashboards. So you won't have to sort of toggle it on, it will be on by default. If you want to turn it off for any reasons, you can still do that, but by default it will be turned on. But we haven't stopped just there. What we've done is also enable the same functionality to work on graph bars as well, on bar graphs, sorry. So here what you have to do is additional steps, because by default bar graphs, they do come with the same color. So all you have to do for bar graphs is go to the color settings of the bar graphs, enable multiple colors, and by default what we are doing is matching the color to the colors of the other objects on your line graphs. So I'm going to do the same quickly here for my 3 bar graphs. Yep. And here we go. I think we've got fully matching colors across 5 tiles in that case, and that's going to make it a lot easier, especially again if you've got those kind of dashboards on open access that you may have shared with your team on a big screen or wherever that dashboard is being exposed. That's going to help you quickly correlate and really understand, you know, how is that specific object performing across my processor, memory, and other type of performance metrics. And as you've seen, there is little setup, minimum setup. It's on by default when you install 4.8. And yes, for the bar graphs, you might have to do a little bit of work, but that's just one setting to enable the same for your bar graphs. And that's it as far as our new features are concerned on SquaredUp for SCOM. What we are going to do is to go now on SquaredUp for Azure. So on SquaredUp for Azure, as I said at the beginning, we've got exactly the same features available in SquaredUp for Azure. So it's going to be a lot more straightforward now. So if I go to my order processing app, what we can see here, we can see my new SQL line graphs here. If I just expand the settings just to show you how we've done it, again, exactly the same. Give it a connection string, give it an SQL query, and then configure it so that it shows the right data in the right place, and you're done. Right, so again, SquaredUp for Azure, as it will work with the SQL line graph will work with any SQL databases that you've got access to. So you may, if you've got a business intelligence database with some business metrics, if you've got a monitoring tool that supports SQL, maybe SolarWinds, or any SQL databases for that matter, you will be able to graph the results in this new tile. What you can see as well is because that settings we looked at earlier, the matching color setting is on by default on all our dashboards. It actually works as well on the SQL line tiles. So you can see, for instance, you know, the L750 model is in pink here, and it's going to show in pink here as well. So again, very easy to correlate the same object across 2 different graphs. Let's go over to our sales app servers. So what we can see here again, the color matching across 3 different graphs, very nice and easy to look at. There is one difference with SquaredUp for Azure. In Azure, Azure actually stores the metric labels. So as you've seen in SCOM, we've had to manually add or specify what was the metric label, whether it was percentage, megabytes, seconds. In Azure, we would do that by default because we can retrieve this information from Azure. So all you have to do is, if you don't like the MB how it's displayed, you can customize that if you wish. You could perhaps add some short text here if you wanted to customize the actual label. But by default, it will be on, and it should work in most, if not all cases, out of the box. And that's it. As far as version 4.8 is concerned, we've looked at SquaredUp for SCOM, SquaredUp for Azure. We've looked at the line graph for SQL Tile. That's going to give you even more possibilities to build more meaningful dashboards, whether that's an application SQL database, your SCOM data warehouse, or any third-party databases, whether that's a monitoring tool or any other databases. The new performance Scalar Tile gives you easy and simple visualization for at-a-glance view of your important metrics. That's a free disk space we looked at here. And our new metric labels and line colors consistency. And with that, I think we need to go back to the presentation, John. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go.
That's great. Thank you, Vincent. Great set of new functionality we're adding into this release, and hopefully addressing a lot of features that customers have been asking for. As I mentioned at the start, we've got around 30 customer requests are being addressed in this relatively small release compared to the last version, but some really great functionality that's going to make those open access dashboards that are shared on your wallboards a lot clearer to users who may not be so familiar with the sort of detail that's coming out of SCOM and Azure, and making it much easier to correlate information across the whole dashboard with the unified colors. I think it looks fantastic.
The release candidates is available right now to download from our website. You've got the link on the slide, download.squaredup.com. So you're the first one to know at the webinar attendees. There is going to be a release email as well that will be sent out. But by all means, go ahead and install it in your production environment. It's going to be fully supported. We do still recommend with version 4.8 that you can do an in-place upgrade. There are no breaking changes, and as always, you will get priority support if you were to use the 4.8 release candidates. And I believe, John, we will announce the general availability later this month.
Yes, that's right. So assuming no major issues come out of the release candidate, then the general availability release will follow in a few weeks, as usual. Yes. Great. Thank you, Vincent. Okay, so now we've looked at the release we've just done in September. So that's available for people today, as Vincent said. Let's take a quick look into the future. So 4.8, we've got new visualizations with the line graph, the performance data scalar tile as well, and then some improvements to the existing functionality around color matching and the ability to apply specific labels to the metrics in the graphs, which is fantastic. So version 5 is coming up in the future. We did send out a survey back, was about a month, 6 weeks ago. And this survey was really to get a feel for how people were finding some of our core functionality. So what are people doing with Web 8 visualizations, or what would they like to do? How are they finding the dashboard designer when it comes to laying out dashboards in particular sort of formats? And one of the most used features we've got is open access, and generally how is that performing for everyone? We also use this opportunity to announce the end of support for Internet Explorer, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. If you haven't had a chance to complete the survey, there's a shortened web link at the top of the page there. Please head over to there and complete it now. We've had a really great response, and it's really encouraging to be working with customers who are so passionate about what we do. So Vincent and I have gone through virtually all of the responses so far, but if you've got more to say, please go and fill in the survey again. This isn't just for the next release, but it is actually scene setting for all of the version 5s that we're going to be building out over the next year, 2 years. We're going to make a good dent in this with 5.0 coming soon. What I wanted to do was actually take you through some of the feedback. So when it comes to web visualizations, we wanted to find out what visualizations would people really like. If you ask that question simply, it's relatively evenly split. You've got donuts, line graphs, and bar charts. I don't think that's a big surprise to anyone. But we also asked people to prioritize which one would you like to see over and above the others, and line graph there is a clear winner. So our engineering teams are busy working on that at the moment, and hopefully we'll in 5.1 or 5.0 or 5.1 we'll be able to deliver these new visualizations for you as part of the web API tile. The other interesting thing we wanted to learn in this survey about web API visualizations is what tools do you want to display data from? And Azure DevOps was a clear winner. I think we had about 30 responses specifically on Azure DevOps, with other big monitoring tools like Dynatrace and New Relic coming in within the sort of handful, maybe a dozen or so. But it's really great to see that SquaredUp is being used in conjunction with some of these big monitoring tools, and that actually you want to get data out of those tools and display them within our dashboards. So when we start to build this functionality out, we'll be looking at these specific tools to make sure that we do some thorough testing against those particular products with the new visualizations as they come out throughout the life of version 5. Next in the survey was around the dashboard designer. So simple question, can people create the layouts that they want within the dashboard designer? And overall, people were generally positive. Most people tending to agree. A good segment of people definitely agree they can get exactly the layout they want. And there's a little bit of there's probably a little bit of room for improvement in here. So Vincent and I went through all of the comments on the dashboard designer specifically to find out what did people want to be able to do. And there was some good themes coming through all of the feedback, which was more intricate layouts. But the people want to be able to do that through the user interface rather than editing JSON. Some people are finding JSON to edit a little bit cumbersome, but definitely people want to be able to have these sort of multiple rows, multiple columns within rows and things like that, and just make it easier to do through the user interface. And we've got a little sneak peek to show, and Vincent's going to talk about that now.
Thanks, John. Yes, that's a sneak peek that our engineering team are busy working on at the moment. So as John said, and based on the feedback, we really wanted to bring some improvements to the overall experience of designing a dashboard. But ultimately, what we wanted to aim at is save you time creating more impactful dashboards out of the box. So it is true that today you can do a dashboard as complex as you like it to be if you use our JSON, but if you don't use our JSON, you still get some good value. But we wanted to go the extra mile and give you out of the box designing features. So the potential features we are looking at here, we are looking at the ability to add new layout templates. So one click to create more interesting and powerful layouts. The big one perhaps is the ability to add any number of rows within any number of columns. So really that's probably where most of the requests from the customers came from, but also that's where most of the flexibility will come in the ability to do that. And we'll also probably go a little bit further and allow you to sort of split columns as well, which will give you some nice capability here as well. And something that we ought to have done perhaps a little early is to improve the drag and drop as well, especially if you've got a big tile. It is sometimes difficult to do that precisely. So what you can see on the right hand side is a dashboard that one of our customer success experts has actually created in less than 3 minutes. And what you can see on this dashboard is it was created from a layout template. And then he's added several rows. You can see already 2 rows, one with 3 columns, one with 2 columns. And you can also see how the split column works. If you look at the 7 days, 30 days, 7 days, 30 days, you can actually split column under a more wider column. So this is really the kind of flexibility or the end result that we are aiming to give you. So we are busy working on that at the moment, and it's looking promising so far. So we can't wait for you to get access to it. But also, I think we will cover that later with John on the feedback loop. If you're interested in perhaps having a go, trying what we've done so far, from about mid-October, we will have you'll have the option to show that and to let certain customers try it. So if you're interested, just as always, get in touch with us.
Yes, so as Vincent said, the first version that's going to include this improved dashboard designer is going to be 5.0, and then please continue giving your feedback and we'll be able to further improve it in subsequent versions later. So moving on, the next section in the survey was around open access. So open access, everyone knows, best way to share your dashboards on a wallboard or with users who don't require a login. But what we wanted to find out was how successful are people being with this feature. We know it's used really heavily, so are people finding this this experience good? And again, everything was relatively positive. Overall, yes, people can get their dashboards out there to other users. They can display them on wallboards successfully. And then not quite as positive around are they being correctly displayed or rendered. And there's possibly a feature request in there where users need to be able to interact with a shared dashboard, maybe rolling over the grass to get some tooltip information. So the third one down there was particularly interesting, and we hear with our support team there are some potentially some issues out there. But when we analysed the information, we discovered that where people are sharing 10, well, probably more than 10, maybe it's 20 or 50 dashboards, some problems are starting to creep in, like the rendering isn't working quite right sometimes, maybe the CPUs or the RAMs are being overutilized within the server that SquaredUp's running on. So this is an area we're going to sort of dig deep into, and version 5 will see the first versions of that new open access coming through to hopefully sort of net out some of these issues. So we're really excited to be delivering that in the future too. Next up was around Internet Explorer. So we wanted to get a sense from our customers how widespread is the use of IE. If you look at some of the World Wide Web statistics, Internet Explorer isn't used that heavily, but that's probably more aimed at the sort of consumer end users. And we also need to find out what's it like within the enterprise itself and specifically within our customers. And the resounding support for it going was quite heartwarming. There's lots of reasons for us to stop supporting IE. It's going to help improve the performance of the application. It's going to make our build processes simpler and so on. But overall, people can't wait for Internet Explorer to go away, and Microsoft has signaled its end as well on their applications like Office 365. It was really encouraging to hear that, yes, people are ready for us to stop supporting that as well. Don't worry, if you're using version 4, IE is still supported within version 4. This is from version 5 on onwards only, but thought it was good information to share. And finally, feedback. Feedback is an ongoing job for us here at SquaredUp. We enjoy talking to our customers. We love to hear how you're using our product. If you're interested in evaluating prototypes, maybe you want to try out the new dashboard designer, we can get you some early versions of that later in October. If you've just got some simple suggestions to submit, head over to feedback.squaredup.com, fill in your suggestion, and one of us will take a look at it. And as Vincent said, if you want to try out that prototype, please drop us an email at feedback@squaredup.com and we'll make sure we get a build over to you, and so you can start to have an early look at it. I think we've got a couple of minutes left over for any questions. I know we've been busy in the chat answering people's questions there. So if anyone else has got anything else they want to ask us, please put it into the Q&A panel and we'll get the answer over to you. So one of the questions that we had in the chat panel already was around some of the SQL queries that Vincent was displaying during his demonstration, some of those really complicated ones. And the ask there was, can we share them with you? Yes, we'll probably follow up the webinar with some blog posts, and we'll be sure to share the queries as templates as part of those blog posts. That's a good idea. Thank you. New questions come in. Does SquaredUp for SCOM provide cost dashboards for Azure? No, not at the moment. It doesn't. Our SquaredUp for Azure product is directly connected to the Azure cost management APIs. So you'd need to use SquaredUp for Azure to get cost information out of Azure. Another question we had in earlier was around the default perspectives in 4.8. The release candidate doesn't include any updates to the default perspectives, unfortunately. We are looking at it for the GA version, but no promises today. Okay, no one else has got any questions. we'll wrap up there. Thank you very much, Vincent, for your demonstration today. It was really good to see this great new functionality. And as I said, everyone should go straight over to download.squaredup.com and grab the new release candidates. Tell us what you think. We're ready and waiting for your feedback.
Thank you, John. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, everyone.